Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise on behalf of the overtaxed people of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. Like the overtaxed Canadians across the country, residents of the Ottawa Valley want a carbon tax election now. The socialist-separatist coalition has made its position plain for all to see. There will be no relief for Canadians until the Marxist members secure their pensions. Yet the need for an election and an end to this wacko government has never been greater. This government has lost touch with real Canadians. Just look at how the minister responded to my question last June about scrapping the carbon tax. Instead of defending the carbon tax, the minister tried to change the channel by bragging about their higher capital gains tax. Canadians are angry about higher taxes, and the Liberals' bold new policy is to increase taxes. The Liberals have adopted the motto, the beatings will continue until morale improves. The taxes will go higher until their polls improve. This government has lost touch with reality. They've trapped themselves inside a simulation. Mr. Speaker, that's not a reference to the matrix or metaphor. Statistics Canada built a tax simulator. Anyone can download it for free. It's widely used by academics, banks, businesses, parliamentary budget officers, and even the finance department. It simulates the impact of tax changes. The Liberals put their carbon tax in the simulator, and it spit out the number 80-20. The simulator said that 20% of Canadians would pay more in carbon taxes than they receive in climate bribes. The simulator said those 20% were mostly the top 20 of income earners. Anytime a simulator spits out a ratio like 80-20, it just set off alarm bells. 80-20 has its own Wikipedia page for a reason. These technocratic-loving Liberals forget that sometimes a statistic can be both accurate and true while being completely fictional and entirely false. There is a good chance the parliamentary secretary that was selected to respond shortly was handed a speech that includes a phrase like, "The average household gets back more than it pays." In Canada, the size of the average household is 2.51 people. And Mr. Speaker, I don't need to conduct a door-to-door census to tell you there's not a single household with that number of people in it. Yet the Liberals will tell you the average household is doing great under the carbon tax, that the average household gets back more than they pay. The problem with the Liberals is that the average household of 2.51 people doesn't exist. It's a statistical fiction, just like the government's mandate. More Canadians voted for Conservatives in the last 2 elections than voted for the Liberals. Yet these Liberals have arrogantly behaved as if they won a majority. So they kept on increasing the carbon tax. They've increased taxes on property and capital. They tax your work. They tax your energy. And if you try and catch a break to relax, well, they increase the taxes on alcohol, tobacco, and cannabis too. You can't even watch a movie without paying their Netflix tax now. And just to rub the salt into the wound a little harder, on top of the Liberal carbon tax, the video streaming tax, the beer tax, the new digital services tax is the GST. Because nothing says Liberal like charging a tax on a tax. Mr. Speaker, if there was ever any doubt the Liberals are out of touch, I expect this parliamentary secretary to put those to rest. They'll either invoke the simulation to claim the fictional average household is doing great, or they'll resort to climate alarmism and try to convince Canadians higher taxes will fix the bad weather. Maybe they might even do both, but that proves they don't listen to Canadians. It's time for a carbon tax election now.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have to say gold star to this member because she actually mentioned something so important, that the average households get more than they pay. So, you know, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seems to be obsessed, and I say obsessed with the idea of secret cover-up, but there's none. There is none because we always have and will always fully cooperate with the Parliamentary Budget Officer. Our government has actually been clear. The vast majority of Canadians receive more money back into their pockets with the Canadian carbon rebate. And actually, this member just said it. I'm so happy that she knows this. We are responding to the growing climate emergency the world is now facing. And Canadians are seeing it as well. You know, from wildfires, increasingly frequent heat waves, flood, droughts, and hurricane, Canadians are becoming increasingly aware that we need to take climate action now. Carbon pricing is an essential startup to curb emissions because it can't be free to pollute, Mr. Speaker. The Parliamentary Budget Officer analysis of Canada's carbon pollution pricing system confirmed that the majority of households receive more in Canada carbon rebate payments than they face in direct costs due to pricing. Low and medium income households benefit the most, Mr. Speaker, and household in rural area actually, and I want to share this because this is so important. Anyone who lives in a rural area or smaller communities receive actually 20% top up to their Canada carbon rebate, reflecting that they may face higher costs and have fewer short-term options to reduce their emissions. But don't take our word for it, Mr. Speaker. The Governor of the Bank of Canada has explained that carbon pricing contributes no more than 15% of inflation, 0.15% of inflation per year, a tiny fraction of the high inflation we've seen, and economists estimate carbon pricing contributes at most just 0.33% of grocery price increases. Mr. Speaker, putting a price on carbon pollution is a proven method of reducing carbon emissions and continues to be the simplest, most effective way to fight climate change. And that's exactly what we are doing. Because unlike the Conservative Party, we are focused on proven evidence-based solutions to the most pressing issue facing Canadians. The federal government released Canada's 2024 National Inventory Report, which shows Canada is on track to meet our emission-reducing goals for 2026 and on track for 2030. Carbon pricing works, and it shows that the most cost-effective way of fighting climate change. The opposition clearly isn't interested in what we have to say, but would they listen actually to Premier Moe? And I'll say, in May of last year, Premier Moe said that Saskatchewan actually considered alternatives to the federal carbon pricing, but he found that they were all, and I'll say it, too costly. Our government is committed to taking action on climate change, and that's exactly what we will continue to do. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Renfrew-Nipissing Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, we need a dump truck to remove all the trash I just heard. Conservatives do not support the Liberal carbon tax. Provinces do not support the Liberal carbon tax. Canadians do not support the Liberal carbon tax. Even the tax-happy socialists in the NDP do not support the carbon tax. Canadians aren't as stupid as Liberals think they are. Unlike the government, Canadians know how far they drive to work. Canadians know how much they spent in gas last week. Canadians know how much they paid to heat their home. Canadians know they pay more in carbon taxes because they passed math class. Unlike this government, which struggles to put 2 and 2 together, unlike the Liberals, common sense Conservatives will listen to Canadians and axe the tax. It's time to have a carbon tax election, Mr. Speaker.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, so let me say that, as a government, we remain committed to fighting climate change while putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians. And experts agree that putting a price on pollution is the most cost-effective way of fighting climate change. Mr. Speaker, climate change is real. And unless the Conservative who are trying to avoid the conversation on a world stage, we as a government have a plan, and we will continue to deliver on our plan to fight climate change and bring real measures of helping Canadians. Merci.